everybody, my name is Yulia Skatova, and today I am going to show you how to make a really yummy and fairly easy to make meatloaf made of minced turkey meat and spinach. Now with this recipe we're going to need an awful lot of stuff, so I'm going to introduce it bit by bit and you can see the list below the video. So what I'm going to start with. To begin with, I'm going to cut my spinach. So I've already rinsed it and dried it. I'm using fresh spinach. If where you are now there is no fresh spinach, or if you cannot find it, you can also use frozen spinach. So I'm going to get rid of the stems and leave just leaves. I don't want these sticks, so I'm removing them. And actually, you can see that I have quite a lot of spinach here, but it only looks like I have a lot, because later it won't be that much at all. Okay. Drain up this. So I'm removing the stems from all the spinach that I have. Okay, spinach is a really cool thing. Everybody remembers the cartoon about Popeye, right? So if you eat spinach, you're going to be strong and you're going to be healthy. Plus, well, spinach is kind of cool, really. It's really rich in minerals and vitamins. And it's just nice to have something with your meat besides meat itself. Okay. So I'm removing my stalks from the spinach leaves. That's a lot of spinach I have here. Well, actually the box said 250 grams, which shouldn't really be like a lot. There's just so much volume in it. Okay, as I'm removing the stems, I'm also looking for leaves that don't look as nice. And as I find them, I check them out because I don't want them. So anything that looks less than healthy, less than yummy, less than appealing, deserves being checked out. We don't want it in our meatloaf. Okay. And a bit more. Okay, now I'm making sure that all the leaves that I have are nice and green. Anything that is not nice and green should be dumped. Okay, so I've removed all the stems and stalks from my spinach. Now I'm going to take this pan. I'm going to put it on high heat first, just to warm it up, and then I'm going to stew this spinach with a bit of olive oil, because I want it just a bit done, because I want the volume to subside a little bit. I want it to occupy less space. Basically, you can use a frying pan, and in this particular case, I like this pan, so I'm going to use this. Okay, so it's warming up, and I'm going to pour some olive oil. You can use butter, or you can use ghee as melted butter. You can use sesame oil, or any oil or butter of your choice. But to use some fat, well, some good fat, is very important in this case. Okay, so I have all this lot of spinach. For this much spinach, I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of olive oil. If you want to use more, you can use more. It won't hurt really. I'm just stipulating that you shouldn't use less. Okay, put this in here. Now I'm putting my spinach. And as I've put all the spinach in, I'm going to put it to medium heat. And I'm going to mix it. Oops, yellow leaf. I'm stirring it to make sure that my oil covers all the leaves nicely. I've been stirring the spinach for the last 2 minutes, and you can see that now I have very little of it. So it's reduced, and I'm going to add some basil. If you have fresh basil, it's awesome. Basically, in this case, you can use any greens of your choice. It can be basil or oregano or parsley, anything. Okay, I'm adding basil, and I'm turning it off. I don't want any more heat. It's done for now. I'm turning it off, and I'm removing it from the heat. Now, I'm going to proceed with the meat part. So for this meatloaf, I'm going to use 1 kilo of minced turkey meat. You can substitute turkey meat with minced beef, for example. You could also go for minced pork, but I wouldn't really recommend it because the idea of this dish is to make it light. This is something that you can have every day, something that will be yummy yet slimming. Right, I have this minced meat in here. Going to mash it with a fork. Then I'm going to add 2 eggs, one by one. So I'm adding 2 eggs and I'm mixing it all up. It is very important to mix it all up very well at this stage, because your eggs are the glue for your meatloaf. You want your meatloaf to hold together nicely, make sure to do it well. Once again, if you want to do it with a blender or with a mixer, you absolutely can. I personally prefer do it with a fork because I don't mind. Or just, the thing is that if you don't cook that much, or if you don't have much experience cooking, chances are that you don't have a mixer or a blender. So I just want you to see that it's absolutely possible to cook something nice without having all the appliances in your kitchen. Okay, now that I've mixed it all fairly well, I'm going to continue. Traditional meatloaf recipes usually use some white bread or any other bread soaked in milk. What I'm going to use instead is a bit of corn flour and a bit of very fine oatmeal. So, how much of it am I going to use? Okay, I have this measuring cup here that says half cup. So I'm going to go for half cup of oatmeal, like this. Going to pour it in. and keep mixing. Mixing well is very important. Once again, if you're too lazy to do it with a fork, because 1 kilo or 1.5 pounds is actually quite a handful. So you could do it with a mixer if you have it. Once more. Okay, the whole thing is gone now. Now, I've just mixed the half cup of fine oatmeal into this meat and egg mixture. Now I'm going to add several spoons of corn flour. One. Two. And 3. I think that's enough. And I am keeping mixing it all really well. Actually, if we're talking about spices, if you want to, at this stage you can also add some fresh or dried greens. Some chopped oregano or basil or anything you like. I'm just going to add a pinch of salt a bit later, because I have some spices with my spinach, and I'm going to add some later, you will see. Actually, if you don't want to mix it with a fork, you can also do it with your hands. At this point, I'm really fine with the fork. Now, it's all mixed up nicely, and I'm going to add some salt. I think this is about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And I assume that the minced meat that I bought is fairly salty, so I'm adding half a teaspoon, mixing it. And adding another half a teaspoon. I assume that 1 teaspoon of salt for 1 kilo of meat won't kill me. They say that salt is generally unhealthy for you, which is true to some extent. However, you still need a bit of salt for the food to have some taste. Because, really salty things are not exactly healthy for you. Something that is marinated, like dill pickles, or if you really love olives, olives can be marinated with so much salt that it can be unhealthy. Sometimes smoked salty fish can be unhealthy. But, this much salt is okay. This is something that your body needs. Alright, now we're done with this. What we're going to do next? Next, we're going to need some aluminum foil and a baking sheet. Okay, I don't see my aluminum foil. Give me a second. Okay, I have found my aluminum foil. I'm going to put it into the baking form. Okay, basically this is not necessary. I do it this way because I don't like excessive washing of my baking sheet. So I'm going to put it in here. Now this is a bit tricky because it's important not to break it. If you break it, then it loses the whole point. Okay, I've shaped it more or less according to the shape of the baking sheet. Now I am going to take this mass going to put it here. So first I put half of it, approximately, at the bottom. And I'm shaping it to fit the bottom of my baking sheet. Right. I assume this is more or less half of it. And now, with my hands, I'm going to add my spinach. Now, if you have some liquid in your spinach, like I do, try to make sure that you get as little as possible into the meatloaf. Yummy. Okay. I have the spinach in here. It's not that hot anymore. I'm going to distribute it with my hands to make it more evenly spread. I'm going to push it a little bit. I'm trying to leave it in the center, and I'm pushing it into the meat. I'm keeping a bit off the edges, both sides, because now we're going to cover it with more meat. So we're covering it evenly, nicely, to cover the spinach. Cover it up. Make sure the layer is nice and thick. Make sure that the sides are covered. That the corners are filled in. You can push it with your thumb just to make sure that there's no air left between your filling and the baking sheet. I have preheated my oven at 200 degrees Celsius, and for now I'm going to put my meatloaf in for 30 minutes. So I'm putting it in the middle. I have the oven heating from top and bottom, so actually it's like lower to have it in the actual middle, and we'll have a look at it in 30 minutes. For now, our meatloaf has been sitting in the oven for almost 30 minutes. Just, 2 or 3 minutes to go maybe. So before I take it out, it won't be ready yet, but at this stage, we're going to cover it with a bit of tomato sauce. Now, classic meatloaf recipes that I found on the internet usually say, oh, come on, take a couple of spoonfuls of tomato ketchup, add some pepper, and there you go. Now, I wouldn't really go for using ketchup in my kitchen for cooking, so I'm going to use tomato puree. So that's not tomato paste, not tomato concentrate, but something that comes out of minced tomatoes. So I'm going to use half a cup of it. So I have this half cup. And I'm going to add some black pepper. I would say what I'm adding is approximately half a teaspoon. And I'm going to mix it. Stir it. Well, maybe a bit more black pepper. This is up to you because remember my meatloaf meat only had some salt. Then the spinach had a bit of basil in it. So actually this is going to be the top, and if you like your food generally spicy, then this can be spicy. Of course, if you like your food spicy, you could have also added some pepper into the actual meat mixture. But I'm going to do it this way, with the tomato sauce. Now, I think, okay, with half a minute to go, I think I can actually take it out. It won't really hurt. So my meatloaf has turned muddy pink, which means that it's getting ready, but it's not ready yet, and it's far from ready at this point. So I'm going to cover it with tomato sauce. I'm covering it and smothering it to make sure that it's covered nicely and evenly. Some of it is going to evaporate and the rest is going to get fixed onto the meat. Okay. I think I have maybe a spoon left, or a spoon and a half. But I think for now, what I have in my meatloaf is good enough. So I'm going to leave it. So I'm going to put it back. And I'm going to let it sit for another 30 minutes. Because that is a lot of meat. The temperature isn't too high because I don't want it to burn. So I'm turning it for another 30 minutes, and in 30 minutes we're going to have a look at it. After another 30 minutes, I'm going to take my meatloaf out and have a look at it. So these are the 30 minutes that it has spent in the oven, being covered with the tomato sauce. Okay, look what I have in here. Now, we're going to poke it with a knife. Okay, I'm poking it. There is some juice coming out, but just a little bit. I would say it feels pretty solid, because, you know, there is a difference. I mean, if you, to understand what I'm talking about, try, you know, when you're just making it, when you just made it, before you put it in the oven, try poking it with a knife and remember the feeling, and then try poking it after 60 minutes in the oven altogether. So, I want my meatloaf a little bit more fried at the top. So, I'm going to put it back in for another 10 minutes, because overall here, there is no liquid anymore, and I think it's pretty much done. But I want it a little bit more deep fried brown. I want this sauce to be a bit brownish. So I'm putting it back in. But actually, if you don't want it brown at the top, at this point it's absolutely ready. I'm going to go for another 10 minutes, and after 10 minutes I'm going to take it out and cut it. See ya. After additional 10 minutes that are actually optional, I'm going to take my meatloaf out of the oven. and I'm going to let it sit to cool down for some time. Basically, if you're really starving, you can take it out and eat it now, but I would let it cool down a little bit and then serve it warm or cold with your favorite vegetables or with rice, or, well, actually it can even go on a slice of bread as a sandwich. So below the video you can find the detailed description of the ingredients that you need and of all the procedures. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And, well,